welcome, and thank you for coming out on this lovely blustery evening. My son regrets from Tom Weber, our board chair. He's actually sick, and we've forbidden him to come tonight and watch on camera. We want him to get very, very healthy and wish him only the best, and he will join us at our next board meeting. So, this is my first time chairing, so please indulge me, my fellow trustees. Be kind to me, and if I make a mistake or miss something, don't hesitate to let me know. So anyway, so I have before you the agenda. Well, actually, two agendas, trustees. So I have a motion to call to order.
So moved.
Thank you, Rick. Seconder. Thank you, Peter. And before you, we have the new agenda, and as per our bylaws, till be updated, we need a motion to suspend procedural bylaw requirement, order of business. And do I have a mover and a seconder for that, please?
Move the recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Grenham. Okay. Thank you. And I never pronounced Donna's last name correctly, so I usually just call Trustee Donna. Sorry. So I have a mover and a seconder. All those in favor, and it has to be unanimous. Motion passed. Thank you. So before you have adoption of the meeting agenda, all those in favor?
Does that mean that the consent agenda is as it is, or is now the moment to say I'd like something taken out?
No, actually, when we get to the consent agenda,
okay.
When we get down to the consent agenda portion. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. So we have a motion that the board adopt the February 26, 2013 agenda. And this is where I believe...
Let's just do that motion.
Yeah, motion, okay. So I have a mover. Move. Thank you, Donna. Seconder.
Second.
Thank you, Rick. All those in favor? Thank you. Now we come to the consent agenda. And this is where, if I'm correct, Secretary Treasurer, that someone could have something moved from this is the portion, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So you see before you the consent agenda. If you wish to have something moved for discussion, you can make a motion. You can have that. Or do not a motion? I'm new at this one. Just let us know, and we will add that to, I believe it comes onto board business. It would be number 4 if someone wants something moved. Yes?
So I would like actually to move the adoption of the regular meeting minutes because I had an amendment, and I would like to remove the BCEC's item for see if there is any comment from senior management.
Okay, so you're looking for number 4 would be, I believe, the number C, the letter from Mr.
Yes.
Wayne Hunter, the chair of SD 63, correct? Would you like that moved up? Perfect.
So agenda D2C, which is the BCEC's letter, would become item 4 on your back page.
Oh.
Under what? It would be under board business. It would be number 4 under the BC School Trustees.
Sorry?
She would like to remove the minutes because she'd like to make an amendment.
So what is the amendment to the minutes?
Oh, have we removed the consent? Do we vote on the consent agenda first and then deal
We can deal
or do we
with
deal with the minutes first?
We can deal with the minutes
Okay.
and then deal with it as an amended motion.
Okay. In the minutes, the last item of board business, number 4, related to Denman Island Community Education Society, the minutes say that I served notice of a motion, and the motion was the board consider a collaboration with Denman Island Community Education Society. Actually, I think that the notice of motion was to untable a motion I'd made in May a year ago, and it was relating to all our community schools. In fact, it was just to establish a working committee of district staff and stakeholders to review key values and issues relating to community schools in general. So it wasn't specific to Denman Island. Maybe I'm nitpicking, but it wasn't. And so in fact, just for information, the motion was not brought back on this agenda, but will be something on the next one. But I just thought that because it says consider a collaboration with Denman Island School, that's not what I suggested at all.
So are you asking that the motion that was reported on the minutes is not reflective of what you meant? Would you like that to have changed? Am I correct?
I guess it would be that I served notice of a motion, which ended up missing the agenda, but that the board consider collaboration with all the community schools, or a review of our values and practices relating to all community schools, not just Denman Island.
Okay.
So do you want?
It could just be amended to take Denman
Procedurally,
Island out.
Debbie, you need to ask Debbie to read back. Did you have your notes?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So in the future, you probably need to bring your notes.
That
So
is
from
what
when.
I have from my notes.
Yeah.
Okay, because I think what I said at the time was that I would bring a motion that had been tabled at a previous meeting.
So,
and
but
I have that
clarification,
motion.
you're just stating that what's recorded on the minutes
Yes.
is not reflective of what you said at the last meeting,
That's
and
right.
you would like that corrected?
Yes.
Okay.
And otherwise, I'm happy with the minutes.
Okay. So we will deal with that. And just a procedural, do we
So
vote
can
on-
we need to know what the change is. So,
Yes.
so would the change be where the italics writing is that the board consider a collaboration with all community schools, period? Is that sufficient for this adoption of the minutes? And I understand the topic will come back in a future meeting.
Is that reflective? Or do you want to give it a few minutes to write down exactly what you
rather than
mean?
of collaboration, if we could say a review of the values and issues relating to all community schools.
But that's not what you said. So
No, it's
here's
not.
what we can
It
do.
is what I said in the original motion.
Here's what we can do. We can note a change. You could, rightly so. We need to strike because that doesn't reflect what Sheila believes it said. You can put you can note that the minutes from this public board meeting will reflect, because Debbie will go back to the video and we'll get exactly what it was that you said. So then you can then in the next meeting tell us if that's right. Right? Sorry, but it's got to stand the way it was. It can't, because for you to remove this, it's great because it doesn't reflect what it said. But we now need to have exactly what it was that you said, right? And so that will then allow you to say yes or no. And if it doesn't, Sheila, then you can bring something back completely different, which is, I think, what you want.
Yeah, Secretary Tersh.
So during that process, we can pull the adoption of the minutes from the agenda
Yeah.
and not
We
adopt
could
the
actually
minutes?
table the agenda, the adoption of these minutes until the next meeting.
So we need a
when we
motion to
have
table?
better records.
Okay, and procedures. Okay, my very first board meeting.
That's
I
right.
had this-
So we can do it one of two ways. We can have a motion to table the adoption of the minutes, or we can pull the minutes from the agenda and not have it included in the consent agenda. In both cases, they will come back revised at the March meeting for adoption.
Pleasure of the board.
Move table the minutes of January 22nd.
Thank you. Moving forward. So we have, the minutes have been tabled to the next meeting,
Not
correct?
debatable.
I know. I'm just clarifying. We have that. We also have Mr. Wayne Hunter's chair to the board now reflected under the
Item 4.
board business, the item 4, correct? So all we have on the consent agenda is the correspondence.
And then the motion to table.
Okay, hang on. So we do that. We vote on the motion to table. We have those two items left, correct? So a motion to vote on the table. Do you have to vote, Mr. He just touched
So we have a motion on the table, a motion to table the agenda, the adoption of the minutes until the March meeting. So we need to vote on that motion, and then we'll come back to the consent agenda and deal with those items.
So can I have a vote on that, please? All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion carried. So under the consent agenda now, we have correspondence, the two items, A and B. We have trustee report, 3A. We have management report, 4A and B. Is everyone okay with that? So I'll have a motion that the board approve the consent agenda items as amended.
So moved.
Thank you. Seconder, thank you. All those in favor? Thank you. So the board did hold an in-camera meeting where we dealt with personnel and property issues prior to this meeting. And, thank you. So we have tonight a presentation and delegation. And I would like to acknowledge our the principal of Puntledge, Mr. Kevin Reimer, was unable to make it tonight. He gathered he's back east to some wonderful presentation in some ward.
Because, of course, many of you know, I believe it was in the newspaper, that Kevin was one of the recipients of the Principal of the Year award. And to be fair to him, he's quite taken aback by the whole process. The only reason that I think he sort of agreed to sort of let his candidacy stand was at the end. This week, he's actually back east in Toronto, receiving his award, of course, but working with the other 49 recipients from across the country with the with the Rothman School of Leadership for a week, which is quite an excellent opportunity for an already excellent leader. He'll learn lots and come back with new ideas. So we congratulate him once again, and we're hoping that he'll bring back some fresh new ways of looking at leadership. It's quite an honor to be part of that Rothman School of Leadership.
So I welcome Catherine and Doug. Thank you very much for coming to our board meeting, and the next few minutes are yours.
Thank you.
10 minutes.
10 minutes.
That's what we told Kevin. Did he not tell you?
Now you know how we feel all the time.
Okay, you can do it.
You're not going to blink. That's the way it is.
Yep.
Is that come on?
It's not even trying yet.
Is it trying?
Play here. Do we hear?
Has to go green.
Is the blue light on?
It was working.
It was working before. They came early to do
Tom,
it.
you don't need to turn the lights on.
Yeah, the lights will be fine.
This
Wasn't enough time.
It's all
Switch chairs.
9 minutes.
There you go, you got it. Yeah, it's from the time the technology starts.
My time's up. Give us 1 minute to get this up.
Yep, absolutely.
Is it okay if we stand up here?
Absolutely, yes, whatever works for you.
By all means.
It's okay.
Absolutely.
We know you.
Yes, you do.
Okay, so we will need one bag for lights out.
All right. We
Or
will
the
get
doors
going
are
on the fly here.
See how dark it is.
I'm Catherine Manson. I'm the VP at Huban Park.
That's great.
And we're going to talk through it. And this is...
My name is Doug David. I teach at Baycold College Park. It's my pleasure to be here tonight to share some stories about the ICANN project that you've probably heard some pieces of.
So we think you've probably heard a little bit about it recently because of Jesse Rubin maybe coming to the Valley, or some of the awesome ICANNs that kids have been doing that have hit the newspaper. But we wanted to give you a fuller picture of the journey, and we're glad that we have this opportunity to share even just for short.
So just breathe, it'll be fine. You'll be good.
All right. We would like to show you a couple of mini little videos because they ground us and they give us some inspiration. So the first one.
Yes, is a video clip called "Educate the Heart." And this first slide in our presentation is "Educate the Heart," and it's the words and images speak to our philosophy and vision about offering our children a balanced education so that they can grow into socially and emotionally capable young people, putting importance on educating both the mind and the heart.
When a child is born, we do everything we can to protect them, nurture them, love them. A child's heart and mind are fragile. As they grow, we want to teach them everything we know.
You recognize his voice.
We send them to school to fill their minds with wonderful knowledge, to give them the tools they need for life. At school, they get a taste of what things are like in the world outside. There is friendship, romance, disappointment, embarrassment, discrimination, and bullying. There are the tools we give them enough to prepare them for this world. We have an enormous responsibility and an amazing opportunity. If we truly want to prepare them for the world outside, we must also educate the heart. Because to navigate the world outside with compassion, acceptance, and tolerance, we need to teach them compassion, acceptance, and tolerance. This can begin in our schools, and it can start today. It can happen at hockey practice, dance class, at day camps, and music lessons. And it's already happening around the world with astonishing results. If we want our children to grow into socially and emotionally capable young people, we must ask for a balanced education that puts importance on educating both the mind and the heart.
So that video was something we found after we started this journey, but we really feel that it speaks to our heart and to what we're trying to do for kids. So where do we begin? Last year, September, I think, George Abbott came, Christine Vander and I were sitting across the table from one another. We said, hey, we should do a professional partnership on inquiry. This would be really cool. We should get the schools together, model it after the High-Tech Tide, inquiry afternoon kind of style that they were doing. So we got together, we got some schools together, Huntledge Park, Quinish, Hugh Band, Denman Island, and Lake Trail. And we thought that the inquiry that we would do would explore personal, academic, and social responsibility. We came up with a question, and it kind of looked like this last year. Implementing an inquiry afternoon and sharing it with a cross-school celebration, would that increase our students' engagement, their motivation, and help them to be self-directed learners? And you can see that there is nothing in there about I Can. There wasn't anything about I Can. When we got together, we were kind of just like, ooh, what shall we do? And we had Abby Luxembourg and Anne-Marie Kraft from Lake Trail, who were already teaching humanities. And we're kind of working on something to do with social responsibility. We had grade 7 classes that really needed social responsibility. And Anne-Marie found this TED Talks by Karen Gursethi, who is from a 5 million person little tiny city in India, and has started this Design for Change. It's a website, but it's a foundation. We didn't really think about what we were doing. We just thought I Can is really a cool theme for these kids. And so we started with it. And we kind of progressed last year with it.
So this short clip that we want to look at actually shows Kieran Gursethi speaking to the journey so far from her perspective, from 2009 to 2013, and it gives a great snapshot of how we've kind of come into this journey.
So we keep thinking, children are so young. How can they make any change happen? Children are supposed to study in school. The third thing that we keep telling our children is, so bacha hai, tu kya karega? And I think Design for Change helps teach all of us adults that you don't have to be rich or strong or powerful to make change happen. All these children did was, they thought from their hearts, will say socha, and change happen. All of them are telling us, I can.
So this is a piece of the video that we found last year, this particular piece here.
So on August 15th, again, Independence Day, 2009, we empowered 100,000 children to say, I can. TED simply exploded the reach of Design for Change. So from going from being an idea in India, it traveled around the world.
I can and you can, together we can be the change in the world. And the winner of the Index Award 2011 in the work category is a design based on a school competition program designed to enable children to express their own ideas for a better world. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Kiran Gursethi and Pranay Desai from Ahmedabad in India.
Yes, we can.
So,
I said it before Obama.
Before Obama, there we go.
The best minds started joining Design for Change.
It's a simple idea, but it's a constructive idea at the same time. And we can't deal with ideas that are too complicated, they don't travel. And so many ideas are self-congratulatory rather than constructive. But I see this as a wonderful constructive gift to the school, the community, the nation, and now I learn to many other countries around the world. So here's the Design for Change.
It has been a very interesting level of participation. And I think what is also particularly interesting for me is to see that design is not something that is being talked about in our schools. And today, Design for Change has actually started sprinkling design into the schools without them realizing it.
DFC starts with that priority. It starts with that invitation that today, your voice, your imagination, right now, matters.
Design for Change would like to give a big hug to the Rockefeller Foundation for honoring these young heroes and telling every adult that yes, superheroes are not in fairy tales. They are in every child who says, I can instead of you cannot. Thank you.
So the cool piece about that was we just thought it was a really logical fit, and that the message was there. We recognizing the potential in every child, and blurring the boundaries between what school looks like and what life looks like. So being a part of the network of performance-based schools, a network of inquiry and innovation is a new name for it. We just took this slogan, that's our slogan at the bottom, if not us, then who? If not now, then when? And we embedded it into our teaching, the 5 schools last year. On the side there are your 21st century learning C's, if you want to call it. We used this performance standard from the government of BC and defined social responsibility. We took a look at, that is just one tiny box over there in the middle somewhere, but the whole rubric really spoke to what we wanted to do with these kids and what they really, really needed. So we went with that, and we went with an anecdotal survey, and the kids did a pre and post survey of their own on their motivation and engagement with the project. So it became the ICANN project. It focused and guided our students on a journey through an inquiry on personal and social responsibility, as well as 21st century learning skills.
So this slide here shows a glimpse of the journey. Countless projects have taken place in our Comox Valley. This particular slide shows a drawing that a child did after participating in a walk to the food bank, where every student at Pumpage packed their canned goods over to the food bank, handed them in, saw the food bank, and so this, what I love about it is it says 1 can equals 1 smile, and smiles and helping people is all that counts. So pretty special.
So I'm going to interrupt you and give you like a 2-minute warning.
2-minute warning, okay.
Or do you guys want to go a bit longer? It's trustees okay with them going a little bit longer?
I'm happy.
Okay, currently trustees are okay with it?
This is important.
Okay, but I just conscious of the time.
It's important. More
So
than
this slide
budget.
speaks to the celebration that we had last year at Quinish Elementary, where all 5 schools came together to share their projects. It was incredible because the district tech people came and they set up computers for all the PowerPoints and presentations that were being shared. The students got to celebrate and find out what other kids were doing around the district. And Zach White, local filmmaker and humanitarian, came in and gave an inspirational speech. It was just a real incredible celebration of our learning journey.
After the celebration, we looked at the data. Good teachers. But before we did that, we could tell. We could tell these kids were engaged. We could see it in their eyes, and we already noticed the vacuum. These are just a few kids. This is 46 kids where we did the pre and post with the social performance standards. And the February data, the 56% is in approaching. In the June data, the 56% is in need. It shifted the whole gang of them up. And we knew it before we got the data, but then we looked at this data later and went, wow, hey, that was kind of neat. So
certainly confirmed what we already knew.
Yeah, it definitely did. So we thought we'd do it again. So beginning of this year, we kind of scooped the team again to see who wanted to be involved. It changed a little bit, but we still, I think there's 4 schools involved, a couple different schools this year. We have a district partnership about this. We changed our question up a little bit. Still wanted that cross-school celebration, student engagement, motivation, self-directed learners, but we also put in community-minded, and we changed and snuck the ICANN in there. So now we have a project that directly works with using inquiry and tying it into this theme of developing this I can mentality in these kids.
So last summer, I was at VIU working with some other people on some studies, and I shared stories of what's happening up here. And a person who's now a very good friend of mine said to me, "Doug, have you heard the We Can song by Jesse Rubin? Because I think you should." And so I gave it a listen, and I thought, wow, this is a great song. And I decided to include it in a presentation that I shared with conference staff last August. And everyone really connected to it, took to it. And one person actually decided, she found the courage to contact Jesse Rubin and say, "This is what we're doing up here. We love your song, and would you be interested in coming to the Comox Valley?" And he agreed to come. And so this slide just captures some of the images at the airport when he arrived, and then Jesse at the schools. This slide just has 2 minutes of what Jesse said about his experience here.
A lot of people doubted me, they laughed in my face, said there ain't no way I would finish that race, but I kept my head down and laced up my shoes.
The community is so amazing, and one of the things I said in the concert last night was I had an idea of what elementary school kids were like, and all of those thoughts have been completely shattered by the kids that I've met, because they've been so passionate and so incredibly dedicated to making a difference. I mean, at 6, 7, 8 years old, to raise money for a charity that they believe in, or to honor one of their fallen relatives, or, I mean, it's just really been heartbreakingly beautiful to be a part of. They're so excited about the song.
So this slide shows a process that the Design for Change Foundation uses. And a year ago, when we were participating in the I Can project, we really didn't come upon this language. But reflecting back, we realized, wow, we were actually using this language to feed our inquiry. Feel, imagine, do, and share. And feel being, why is this important? So I guess the first piece was identify a problem or an issue that concerns you. And then the feel is to ask yourself, well, why is this important? Imagine, what can we do about it? Do, what will it look like to implement the act of change? And then finally share, document the experience so that you can share it with others.
So the big thing for us here was, this was inquiry. This was the inquiry cycle. And we were already teaching that. And so here we had a global, foundation that was doing what we were doing, and it was kind of cool.
Yeah. We've included a little glimpse of something to think about that it speaks for itself. It's just 1 minute.
I hate when my phone charger won't reach my bed. I hate when my hair sleeps on him.
I go to the bathroom and I forget my phone.
Let me take my phone machine out of here to call this machine.
I hate it when my house is soggy. I need to wireless water.
When my mom makes my ass water tasty when I have to write my injection to open the goodness name. Baka ipinisa yung masyaw ito. Kasi tikas mo na ang ba? Wala ito kasi ang bigyan nila. I hate it when I tell them no pimples and they still give me pimples. So kidding. So kidding.
So here we were teaching our kids to be global citizens. And then we asked ourselves, wait a minute, are those problems our problems? Should these kids be acting on those kind of problems? Or should we bring them home? should we embed this in a local context? So we went back to the slogan that you've heard before, and thinking globally and acting locally. We were all about that. We thought that this slogan was important for our inquiry because we embedded the inquiry that we were doing already in what the students were doing globally. But we were trying to teach compassion, acceptance, tolerance, all those things, but we were also trying to connect to curriculum, engage our students, motivate our students, make them passionate about something. And we wanted them to be self-directed learners, and we want them to be community-minded. So we were inviting them to imagine something, to do something about that, to participate in community, and to share. It's really, really messy, but it's fun.
So on the days leading up to February 15th this year, the students in our grade 5-6 class at Huntledge went through a process of feel, imagine, do, and we created the following slideshow to share our experience.
Catherine, take your time, sort it out. Do what you need to do.
The problem is that people in our community going hungry and we can't donate food to food banks.
So, with all that has happened, and the experience with Jesse Rubin coming all this way to see our community, I found the courage to email Kieran Bersetti and just share our stories and say, this is what we're up to, and we're so appreciative of your inspiration. And they were so pleased with hearing our stories that we've been having emails back and forth and Skype conversations, and they're actually quite interested in our part in a global partnership. And so we're excited and sort of figuring it out, and I guess we're bringing that here to say, what do you think?
We're very overwhelmed by her response to us. First thing she asked was, are you using the Feel, Imagine, Do, Share? That was, I don't know, kind of on Skype with her. Then we thought, wait a minute, we are doing that. It was maybe unconscious that we lined up so synchronously with this global foundation that we're talking about. Do you want to get the next slide?
Absolutely.
The map. And they said, would you like to be a global partner? We went, what? So there is no dot on the map in Canada. And right now we're sussing this out, what that means for us. But we think it means sharing within our district. It means sharing out of our district. It also may mean sharing beyond Vancouver Island and maybe BC. For us, it's become kind of a passion because we believe strongly in inquiry. We feel that this ICANN project slides very much into 21st century learning. We also believe that kids need to grab a hold of something, and they seem to have done that. So we don't really know where it's going to go. We don't really know if you can answer whether we should even do this. But we feel kind of lucky to have fallen into this hole. And it's been a wonderful journey so far. And we're keeping going this year.
That's really quite remarkable. Just a piece of the conversation, when I was speaking to Kieran, she said to us, she said, contact your nearest 100 schools and just see if you can make bring these ideas. And so then I thought, okay, well, let me just look at this. Well, Ahmedabad, where she is, there's 5.5 million people, and so I said, well, let me tell you about where we live. And I wasn't pushing it away. I was just offering context.
Scale.
And she said, well, you know what? Start with your schools and see where it takes you. So, really exciting.
That's where we are. That's been our journey.
Incredible, exciting journey, and thank you so much for the incredible presentation.
So I guess on top of that, we do have another showcase coming up this year with the kids. And Doug and I and Christine, who couldn't be here tonight, would welcome any comments, questions, emails directed to the three of us, and we will filter those out to our team, which is busy.
Do you have a date for the showcase?
Yes, we do. It's in Blackberry somewhere.
I'm sure that would be great.
You get it to us, we'll get it to Christine for sure.
Do the trustees have any questions or comments? Or yes, Rick?
We do have one. You say you don't know where it's going. Well, I think the statistics already told you where it's going. It's a success already. You already know that.
I guess what we're saying is we want to seek the support and honor the people here that this will involve.
We would like, I guess we, the three of us, would like to take it further if we can, but that looks like we're not sure. We've asked them what a global partnership means. We were in our heads, I think, let's do this year and see where it goes. There's a few of us going to a conference in Napa Valley. We hope to share this learning there, and she is coming to that conference, so we're hoping that we will. She's already said yes, let's do that, let's meet. So that's all good. Global partnership, does it mean going to Vancouver and sharing with school districts there? Does it mean I don't know?
Does it mean going to India?
Does it mean going to India?
Does it mean going to
Good
India?
question, isn't it? I don't know if it's on there, but there is a conference every year where they have a contest that they pull kids from. We don't have to do that because we don't have the same numbers of kids here. It's a little bit different. But she's already said, are you guys coming to India? So it's a whole, it's big, it goes like this.
And I think trustees should know that from senior staff's perspective, and I've been communicating to Doug, we've said we'll support you however we can. This is just all about where we want to be with kids. This is all about lighting the fire, which is about learning, and it's about learning about yourself. And so we have already, what we've said is that we'll do everything we can to support them and encourage them. And like Trustee Grinham, we know where it's going because you've already shown how this in the big scheme of the journey, how this one small piece has made a difference in the lives of kids. You took kids who, just even if you like stats, 56% of them were not meeting, and in one experience, one wholesome experience, you got them to where they were meeting. And that's a group of kids who, what do we know about kids who give them a chance to believe that somebody needs them? It levels the landscape for all of them. There's nothing more important and motivating for a child. And some of those kids who were taking food to the food bank will be recipients of the food at the food bank themselves. But nothing levels the landscape for a child in vulnerable circumstances than the belief that somebody needs them, right? And so that empowerment is something that we have always struggled to quantify in the classroom. You've created an experience for kids, and the Design for Change experience that's global will give them opportunities to learn things that they'll never learn in a textbook. So we've said we will support you however we can, and we're going to enjoy watching it grow and watching the learning that goes on for educators. Oh, yeah. Doug, I mean, you've talked to me about just how much you've learned through the whole process. Right?
Absolutely, yeah, it's been remarkable. Yeah. A little something from today that I was sharing with Catherine. This afternoon I decided to share pieces of this presentation with my grade 5-6 class. I told them I'm going to the school board office this evening to share this, and I said I'm a little bit nervous about it because I haven't done anything like this before. And then afterward, one boy comes to me and he says, Mr. David, this he says, you don't need to be intimidated. This is a great thing you're doing.
That's so cool. So on behalf of the board, thank you for coming out this evening. I look forward to hearing more about your incredible journey, and keep us informed of what's happening. We'd love to know what's going on, especially the global one. That's awesome.
Exciting stuff.
Exciting stuff.
Thank you very much for your leadership, Catherine, Doug.
Thank you.
And to Christine.
And thank you, trustees, for letting us listen to the conversation tonight. So on to our next agenda item under collaborative engagement. We have item number 1A, board discussion on the provincial budget. Does any trustee wish to make a comment, question, concern? Council Secretary, Treasurer, anything about the budget?
Do we need to reduce paper waste?
Nothing? I actually, in my provincial council report, I will be making some statements regarding the budget and how it affects school districts. So I will be commenting in it right now. Next is, I'm actually going to pass the gavel over to my acting vice chair, Mr. Grinham, because this is my report, and I shouldn't talk about my report as being board chair as procedural bylaw. So I want that.
Just let go of that.
He's been wanting it. Anyways, as you see, the Education Committee report on the agenda here, and this was probably one of the, I guess, most enlightening and meetings I've had in a long time, and it had to do with the fact that we had a number of our teaching staff and administrators out there talking about their passion about learning, working together, collaborating as a team, and the impact what it's having on our students in our schools. So I'd like to thank our Assistant Superintendent, Mr. DeMail, here for helping us get together and having that conversation. I believe that anything that we can do supporting our teachers and our learning community, which ultimately goes back to supporting our students and getting that engagement and that spark. We've heard that tonight, the impact that will have. I think it's just wonderful. And I'm wondering what other trustees thought about the presentation, or any comments over the process and the engaging our students and our teachers in a wonderful new direction that we're doing. Yes, trustee.
I thought it was all really interesting, but I do have a lot of concerns and things that we want to talk about more. And did I get the sense that the principals and vice principals were wanting to have a meeting with us on the topic too? Because we didn't have any time to talk about it. There was so much presentation. It was all very interesting. But when are we likely to? Now? Or, I mean, I think we need more information as well about a sense from the administrators as to how well it's working or where they think it's going to go.
Can I speak to that? I think that you're referencing an email that I think I saw something about, and that was because the administrators were concerned about they're not concerned about it. They're hoping that you will support it, and they were wondering simply if you had any additional questions, because at the end of the education committee meeting there were 2 or 3 questions, and it was a meeting to just touch base. That's all it was. When I followed up with them and said, "What, did I miss something?" And they said they just wanted to there had been a request to see whether or not liaison would meet again, and they suggested that if that would be a time where if there was any further questions about PLCs that hadn't been explained in the presentation, they'd be more than willing to do that, because this has the support of administrators.
Okay, so, I mean, we really haven't had the discussion about it. I really like a lot of the information about what the outcomes are, but I do have some concerns. In some schools, there's quite a variation in the number of hours. So in some cases, I do have a lot of concern about the loss of instructional time, and something that I feel a responsibility as our trustees to ensure that we're getting it. In some cases, I have concerns about the early dismissal part for Lake Trail is a very mixed school, and right now they're 2.5 hours a week, which kids are being dismissed. And in some cases, kids of grade 7 are going home and being alone, and I really wonder if that's appropriate and how the planning process to address some of that is happening. And so my responsibilities are, as a trustee, I feel like I need some reassurance around some of these questions. And then we have, in some schools, in the models that we heard, some of those schools, the teachers are doing it in time outside of class instructional time. That was the original model at Valley View, and yet the other ones this year that have come on track have been based on being within that instructional day. And then I have questions like, is there a way that there could be some negotiation and some give around whether the teachers do it entirely within, or whether some of it is viewed as the additional time outside of instructional hours that teachers do work, and we know they do a lot of it, but could some of it, where is the balance of them actually doing that professional learning component in that time? It's not voluntary, they're paid for it, but it's not within the Bell structure. So I felt that there's a lot of other questions, and questions that as a trustee we're responsible for that core academic hours and all the rest being done. There's a whole bunch of other ones, There's one of the things that's happening is older kids providing support, supervision to younger kids. Lake Trail has kids going up to Arden and doing gym work. My sense from the conference that we went to in the fall, where some of this is being done, there's more training resources putting in. I have to say, I get certain, like how you train your grade 7s or 8s, or you train your grade 12s on how to supervise and do meaningful activity. I have gotten feedback from some parents around that Wednesday afternoons are just kids running around wild in the gym, that there's a high risk there's a potential risk. Sometimes that kids haven't been given release forms, but no one in the school is there really checking to see if they're there or if they've wandered off. That would be, at an older school. And so I just feel like we need additional information and a chance to talk these things through a bit before we just give a solid endorsement to say, go ahead and do it everywhere.
Thank you for that comment, Trustee Medall. Mr. Greenham, you have a question? Would you like to?
No, it's a comment. Certainly, I want to thank the CDTA and the teachers who made their presentation, as well as the principals, vice principals. I think it was quite collaborative, and it was from their heart. And they talked about, what engagement will look like for teachers in the future, and how they're going to get there. I think the issue for us is one which is public acceptance of X block type of thing. I think that's the real issue, but I think the other issue is, my understanding is there's no loss of educational time in the PLC model. Some of it is shifted, but nonetheless there's no lost educational time. So I think that's really important. And the other thing is that public acceptance of X block, and the other issue is about student monitoring, i.e. if we're going to have a district-wide X block, then we have buses, so that, because 60-65% of our students are bused. So we don't want to have them sitting in a school when there's professional development going on somewhere else, either in the school or outside the school. So we have an onus to ensure that those students are taken home. So I think that the whole presentation is important.
Are you giving up the gavel?
Oh, I feel it.
I noticed that. I have Rick, do I have Peter, then I have Donna.
It seems to me that parents need to be satisfied exactly the way the board needs to be satisfied, that what we gain from improved teacher capability and collaboration more than makes up for anything we might lose in the way of instructional time, assuming we do. The second point, I do think that there is some danger in moving to a single model. I would much sooner each school develop a model that suits it, whether it's within instructional time or beyond instructional time. The model ought to suit the school. And that takes into account also the bus situation, of course. So I do think we need to be very careful as we move forward. First, that we remain satisfied that we're getting our money's worth, to put it crudely. Two, that we are able to take into account different needs in different schools.
Thank you. Donna.
So at my son's school, he would come home early, walk home because of the bus, which is quite a hike. And I said, well, why are you home early? Well, it's X blocks, I don't have to stay there. Then we start talking, and he now has realized that there's a help. He's getting better grades because of it. He's getting the assistance. He's getting more, time to ask questions that he doesn't want to ask in class. And the bus doesn't come until 3:30 like normal. There's no coming home early. It works quite well on a personal level. So I don't know. And it was a lack of education on my part and his part at the beginning of the school year as to what was expected of him for an X block.
Thank you. I could clarify a few questions. I can't clarify all of them. And if the trustees would like a bigger, broader discussion, we certainly can do that. I can clarify that, for example, just about the busing and the individual. The idea about going district-wide was to take the bookends of time, but each staff would be looking at what they're doing very differently. Right? Some schools are calling it X block still, and they're freeing up certain groups of teachers to work together while kids are working and getting extra help and things like that. That's a model that you'll see in the high schools particularly, so that kids, and in all schools, any student that needs to stay at the school because the parents can't pick them up or they don't, there will be activities and supervision as there are now for them to stay on campus. The intention was also, when we've already started the conversations with our community partners, as I think Trustee McDonald suggested one time, make sure that they know what the schedules are so that there could be after-school programs offered on those days by Courtney Rec and folks like that. But certainly each school will have its own flavor. The difference here will be that, as I've noted before, that teachers will have opportunity inside their work day to collaborate together to help make these changes that we're asking them to do. These are, as we move forward in these new pathways, very few of us were prepared in our university days of teaching and training to make the changes that we're hoping we will achieve for our students. And so rather than that being done off the side of someone's desk, what we've seen through the professional partnership program for the last 5 years, and trustees, board after board, have heard the benefit of teachers working together to solve problems, to develop curriculum, to find different ways of learning and doing, and they themselves learning. So our thoughts have evolved to a place where district-wide there would be some bookmarks around the time, and they'll be different from secondary to elementary because elementary has an earlier dismissal time, and everyone's elementary dismissal time is different by 6 minutes here and 3 minutes there. I've yet to sort that out. I don't quite know how to address that. I don't know why we don't all dismiss at the same time. But somewhere within that there would be a time of early dismissal over the course of, Tom, how many, 15?
Yeah.
15 next year, and the calendar right now that we would project would be 15 collaboration events for teachers. We're well within the instructional minutes now under from the ministry's new changes. And some of those would actually be recovered through the normative reporting 3 sessions that we normally already have, and we'd be able to do a much better job around reporting and expanding that, simply as a pilot to see what that looked like, but for each school to have its own unique approach to what that looks like, because it will look different in every school. I've heard one of the models that I know that elementary schools are exploring, like intermediate teachers working together, one session, and the next time it will be primary teachers, and in the in-between times there are school-wide things organized for kids, or if those kids are going home, even for those kids who want to stay back for learning assistance, because our EAs will still be there, right? This is not, for our QP workers will be part of the collaboration, and we'll be working with teachers, which is really important, but we'll have some staff available to support those students who can't get home or who need to stay to get that extra time. So over the course of next year, what we would do is we would start through this we were talking about February, beginning to review and evaluate what has happened, all those questions that we need to attend to, so that we can see that the efforts that teachers are putting in, because this is going to be new for them too. This is going to be a new way of being for them and working together for some of them. So are the efforts of teachers matching change for students? Are teachers feeling more prepared to try new ways of learning, to develop new ways of assessment? And we'll make a decision then through the spring with the input of students, importantly. Students are going to be a big piece of this, teachers and parents and administrators, about what we've done so far and what we've seen, and we'll make it come back to the board with a decision about carrying on into the future. So this would be a pilot for a year to see where we get to, and then we would review and reflect. Now, again, that doesn't address all the questions. Trustee McDonald, I'd just say that as I didn't write as fast as I should have, but we have talked about in what Education Committee meeting in 2 hours couldn't give you were answers to most of those questions. We've thought about those things, and we do believe it's our responsibility to make sure that parents understand the purpose of the time, that they understand the purpose of the time in relation to what they might perceive as lost time instructionally, and that all of this is in an effort to support our learners, and particularly, you'll hear from teachers, our struggling learners, to find better ways and new ways for us to support our students who are struggling with learning. And as we move into a new paradigm about learning, we'll continue to struggle if we don't change our practice. So that's what I can share.
And I think part of our Education Committee would be part of the conversation ongoing. Yeah. Thank you.
And it would be. Yeah.
Perfect. So our next item on the agenda is under strategic direction, and it is reflected on page 25, and the balanced calendar, and we have a briefing note from our superintendent.
You do, Madam Chair. The briefing note is simply, it is brief, unlike my colleague over there, who has long briefing notes. It is simply that there was an ask of the trustee, and he brought that forward to the board. There is a lot of talk, conversation, and discussion going on provincially across many school districts around the notion of balanced calendars, and the wondering was, what exactly does balanced calendar mean? It wasn't that I believed that there was an intention for us to look at it right away, or if there certainly hadn't been, I hadn't heard that it was the wish of the board to pursue a balanced calendar. Balanced calendar I believe it's become a synonym for year-round schooling in many ways, and year-round schooling in the philosophy of looking at the year differently. So year-round schooling might mean 12 months a year in some jurisdictions, like in Alberta and Saskatchewan, it is 12 months a year. But within that 12 months, people sign up for a 10-month cycle of learning. Teachers only still work 10 months. Kids only go to school for 10 months, but they might start in July, and their 10 months run through till that would end in May, if I've got that right. Or they might start in the normal, what we call agrarian calendar, September, through June. But the idea would be that the learning structures, frameworks, the system is open 12 months of the year. When you look at the report, and this is me putting together some documentation from across our province, and I have a couple of colleagues in a couple of school districts who they're actively pursuing this. Not so much that they're going to look at a calendar that looks different than September to June, but within September to June, within those 10 months, there is some research that says that if we broke up the breaks, like winter break, I almost said Christmas, winter break and spring break differently, where we had shorter periods of instruction, then a bit of a break, and then another period of instruction, then we spread them out over the year. Some of the research tells us that that's good for continuous learning for students. Some people would argue that the research hasn't been around long enough to prove that. Proponents of a balanced calendar, hence moving from the terminology year-round schooling to balanced calendar, finding balance in the number of days of instruction versus the days of kids being away from the classroom. There is research that people can point to that says that for students in certain subject areas, an example, the first one that mostly comes to mind is math, that if you have a more consistent approach to teaching math that goes all year, then, for example, how we do in our secondary schools, one semester, so if your son or daughter has math in first semester of grade 9, it's very possible they won't see math again until the second semester of grade 10. That's a very long time. Particularly if you're a student that struggles with math. And so one of the things that in the balancing of a calendar would be that we might approach things like math in a linear way all year round. And if we could build that into a year that didn't have a 2-week winter break and a 2-week spring break, but had more breaks of shorter duration, that would help the learning. That really is, in a nutshell, the Coles notes of what balanced calendar means. There was a time in the 90s and the early 2000s where there was this is one of those events that bubbles and goes away and bubbles and goes away. And there was a time when boards were looking at year-round schooling as cost savings, financial cost savings. My report says, documents that there isn't a lot of research that says that it does. It doesn't say that it costs more. And there are some districts that can report some smaller savings. Most districts that move towards a balanced calendar, particularly since the 2000s, are moving for clearly educational reasons, not for financial reasons. There's no significant cost saving. You're doing it because you believe it's probably more pedagogically sound. One of the things that it does is it changes the pressure on the lives of your structures, like buildings and busing. There are some schools of thought. This is a divided camp. People who really believe in balanced calendars can find research and everything that supports it, and people who don't can find it. And you really have to decide why you would be moving in that direction. And it has to be important to you, I think, as a board, whatever you choose the rationale to be. But certainly there are folks that will talk about in older buildings the conditions for the building, particularly old and tired buildings. You can either be stretching it by having longer breaks, right? Or you could be actually nourishing it by having it longer breaks. Operational folks will say a longer break helps them go into the buildings. I see that gentleman nodding over there, and getting things done and maintaining it and getting it back up to snuff halfway through the year to make it, to have it breathe again and get on. And then you might reduce that time around operations if you went into sort of a lot more breaks in a smaller setting, like you might have a 4-day here and a 5-day here as opposed to 2 weeks, that kind of thing. It really is about why you're doing it. So what I noted is that there are a number of school districts in the province considering a balanced calendar. Richmond is right now in a consultation process with their parent community about a balanced calendar. Maple Ridge, my colleague Jan Unwin, they have 2 schools that are on a balanced calendar, meaning that they start in September and June, but they do very different learning cycles. They do very different ways of organizing. We do terms here. They do learning cycles that are in 6 weeks chunks, and then they have kids at home for 3 or 4 days, and then their parents come in and have interviews and those kinds of things, and then they come back to school on the 5th day, that kind of thing. And I know that Langley School District, I just was talking to the new superintendent there, and they're looking at it in a very serious way going into a consultation process. There are a couple of districts that started the whole adventure 4 years ago, and 2 of those districts have piloted it and did not proceed. And of those other 2 districts, they had initially piloted in 3 schools, and they've landed keeping it in a balanced calendar in 1 school in each of those districts, and they're highly specialized programming schools. Like they're designed so that a different learning cycle makes some sense for them. So that's my overview, Trustee Grinham.
Thank you.
Does that answer your questions?
Yes, it does.
But it is topical, and it is something that the BCSTA has some very good references on their website, the Trustees Association, because it tends to come back to the table for discussion from trustees, to be truthful. I look in the last 20 years, it's come back from BCSTA several times, not necessarily from other partner groups.
Thank you. Anything to comment, Mr. Grinham? You're the one that brought it forward.
No, I just, my only comment is I appreciate the time the superintendent took to put it all together and give us a presentation. I just wanted it for information. Yeah, that's what I have. Thank you.
So we're on to number 2, which is the school calendar. And do you have something else that you want to hand out to us this evening?
No, I don't. Stop.
So, how do you want to handle it? Well, I'm thinking if you're going to hand something out, I would like to give trustees just maybe a couple of minutes just to review it, if that would be okay.
So one of the things that has occurred for the members in the gallery is that I actually was ill for a couple of weeks, and I kind of fell off the face of the earth, and I apologize for that, and some things stacked up, and I wasn't able to attend to them until I got back. One of the conversations that I would have had with trustees at the last education committee meeting, which was 2.5 weeks ago, where there was this presentation about PLCs, and it came from teachers, it came from administrators, and they presented to the trustees at education committee a variety of different options and an excitement and a real sort of zest for the idea of PLCs. If I had been there, I would have actually summarized the whole thing with a conversation that noted to trustees that senior staff would be recommending that in the school calendar for next year, as a pilot, we would be embedding PLC time into the school calendar. And we would be asking for their endorsement of that as they approve the school calendar for next year. It has been a topic at the calendar committee. The stakeholder groups that were there knew that this was something that the PLC embedded in the school calendar would be coming from senior staff, but I didn't get an opportunity to do that, and that's my fault because I wasn't available. And so I had a conversation with trustees just recently about whether or not, because we're going to have to, as we're required by Bill 36, to move to consultation in the month of March on the school calendar, this is the new change, it's kind of speeded up, would it make sense that if, with their endorsement, we placed the notion of the PLCs being embedded in the school calendar as part of the consultation for parents, with an explanation of what PLCs are and what they're meant to do, and answers to the questions as part of the consultation process. And rather than going to consultation on the standard calendar without the PLC time or start and ending times, because the ministry doesn't require that anymore, would it be more fair, or would it be more reasonable for parents to see the whole thing and then give feedback to trustees and to senior staff about all of it? So as I engaged trustees about that just recently, I asked, would it make sense for us to share a draft calendar for trustees to receive the consultation from parents about the whole calendar and then make their final decision on the whole calendar. So I'm waiting to know if I should distribute this to trustees, and then we could talk a little bit more about it. Just lost all those papers.
If I could just add, it is the same calendar that is in your package, with the exception being the PLC days.
Pleasure to the trustees. Would you care for that information? We have this conversation tonight.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
Okay, and I just have to find where I have them.
So just give us.
Here they are, right here. And I'll sell to the gallery too. It's not. Okay, so You could send these this way and into the gallery, or send them that way. Ron, if you end up with extras, Director Amos, if there's extras by the time they come, can you share them for the gallery? And simply all this is a draft calendar for 2013-2014. This is the calendar that was worked on by the calendar committee with all the stakeholder group. It is a rollover calendar. Do you mind me doing this one? Which looks very much like the calendar for this year. It includes a 2-week spring break, but it does not include the 2 weeks connected to Easter, which is probably good because we will be the district that waits the longest for spring break, I think, across the entire province this year, because part of how we achieved the 2-week spring break was we attached it to Easter. In the course of the rollover from last year, we are looking at a calendar that has 184 days in it, which is within the norm of how you've seen every provincial standard calendar for the last millennium, it feels like. And historically, a school year in British Columbia with a provincial, when the province was giving us the calendar, was anywhere, depending on the year, from 184 days of instruction to roughly 187. There was a couple of years that in the 7-year cycle we ended up at 187. The calendar that we propose right now from the calendar committee for 2013, 2014, as I said, is 184 days. And for those people who like to plan their holidays for 2 more years in advance, not that I'm that organized, the calendar for 2014, 2015 would be 186 days, and for 2015, 2016 would be 185 days. So this new calendar model for us of a 2-week spring break with the adjustments that have been brought to bear from Bill 36 keep us right on target with what we've always done for the last 20-odd years. And we're certainly within the number of days of instruction, well within them, actually. So that seriously hasn't changed very much at all. The only difference in this calendar that you're looking at on the Singleton sheet is the addition of what you see are the blue things, blue blocks that say PLC X block. And they would, as you can see, they don't always occur in pairs in a month. We've been strategic about it. So in September there would be 2, but in October there would be 2, November 2, and in December 1. It's a short month. January, we have the exam schedule, of course, for secondary, and so we've got only 1 in there because it makes sense that kids would be working on exams in those weeks and preparing for those, or different assessment strategies that are occurring in our schools. 2 in February, 1 in March, 2 in April, 2 in May, and then none scheduled for June. It's important to note that part of what we've been wanting to do is address what we think has been a weakness in our reporting to parents processes. I've talked about that for a number of years, last 3 or 4 for sure, noting that for many parents they've given us feedback about how you get your 10 minutes and you do your best in your 10 minutes, and teachers are pressured for time. And so one of the things to note is that the Provincial School Act gives us 3 early dismissal days for reporting to parents, and they would be rolled into these times. So we're recovering not the 15, we're back down to 12. And I would argue that we've actually have found some, just because of the way the year rolls out, we're actually well within the ministry's requirements of instructional time. There is no loft in the required instructional time. And we're believing that because in many of these PLC models there'll be remediation work for students. Students can stay, as I noted earlier, and get help. In fact, in many of the high schools that's built into their model. In fact, that's what's driven them to move to the model, to work with those students on those days in very small groups or individually to get them back on track and to help them with their learning. We think that that could be a very beneficial way for teachers to be working with students outside of the larger groupings that you find in classrooms. The other thing that we'd note that around the PLC time, that for most of our struggling students, they'll actually have more instructional time because they'll be required, gently encouraged, and be phoned home when they're not there. They will not be going home. Right? Even if their parents, if they had talked their parents into their, I don't need to come, there would be a phone call home that the parent knows that on that X block, particularly at high school, that there is an expectation and there are things for that student to do. That's currently the piloted model right now. It's currently what goes on at Isfeld. It's currently what Highland is starting to pilot. It's what Vanier is doing, and that's the expectation. And at the elementary level, again, many of you know of the schools that already are doing this work, and that students are able to stay and get extra help. So that's what we're looking at. So what we'd be asking the board is for some endorsement of this be the calendar that we ask for feedback on in its entirety, in its 2 weeks spring break, in where we placed the statutory holidays we can't change, but where we've been placed some of the school days, professional days, that notes that there are 3 professional days in August. That's part of how we achieve a 2-week spring break. Many districts don't do that, and then that's where they have difficulty finding the 2 weeks. We'll have our teaching staff and our QP staff engaged in professional activities through that 3 days in August, and we're suggesting that it be the 27th, 28th, and 29th. So what we'd like is the opportunity to put this full calendar out for full consultation with parents, so they see the whole picture, and then we can, the board will make the decisions they need to make, and we can continue to answer the questions about PLCs. We can continue to show the planning that we've already done and we're preparing to do around the PLCs during this consultation month to make sure that trustees are feeling comfortable. We'll bring it all back to the March board meeting, and the trustees will have had time to see the consultation before the March board meeting. And I know I've missed something, Tom.
I was just going to go through what the consultation process would look like. So the calendar will be posted. It's ready to go online on our district website. There's a forum on there where parents and employees will be able to view it and actually comment on it and get feedback from what levels they're at. So it helps us in our planning. We will ask the schools to place it on their website, to have discussions with their staff members, to place it on their agenda for their PAC meetings for the month of March, and in their newsletters as well to continue. Our hope is that by doing it that way, we will get the message out to all our partner groups and all our parent communities to have a look at this and take part. I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the work that was done by Mr. Jeff Taylor and the committee last year with their extensive consultation around the 2-week. That afforded the ability this year to try and go forth with as close to a rollover calendar as we could, and with the exception of the addition of the PLC, it is a rollover calendar, and that was the information that was shared, and that is just because of the amount of work and consultation that occurred last year from Mr. Taylor and the committee members, so thank them. You can see as well in the briefing note, I'd like to acknowledge the committee this year who looked at it, and it was, like I say, because of the amount of work that was done last year, it was fairly straightforward for the committee this year.
And so and if there's any other questions?
Sorry, I forgot one last thing.
Okay.
I apologize. With Bill 36, it's the first time ever it was required to submit. They've separated the calendars from the DL, distributed learning, and I'll use the term bricks and mortar schools. The committee is suggesting that the one calendar would be submitted, the same calendar for both DL and for the distributed learning in terms of the days.
So my understanding for procedure is that we need a motion from the board to accept this draft calendar to proceed, am I correct?
To consultation.
To consultation?
Correct.
So do I have yes,
I'll move that the 2013-14 draft calendar be adopted for consultation purposes and consideration at the March board meeting.
Okay.
Did you get all that, Deb?
Okay. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Peter. Any comments or questions? Or yes, Paula.
Some schools have put in PLCs without the early dismissals if they wish to continue keeping the kids at schools. We had already sort of discussed that it's different at each school, and some schools want to keep their kids. Would this affect?
So when we move ahead next year, on a case-by-case basis, depending on busing will have to do district-wide. Right? So then those will be decisions that schools will then make. Schools are waiting to know whether or not it will be inside the school day for them. And they will then they will adapt their models appropriately with them still having all kinds of autonomy to do what it is. But for example, if we're going school-wide and there is busing and they want to keep their students, then we'd have to figure that piece out with them, right? And students who would need busing would need to go. Right, or they might find another way of doing the activity that they were going to be doing in a time frame, so that they earn another time, so that kids could leave. Right, I'm not aware of any school that has told us, as we've gone through this whole process, that if it's inside the school day, that they will want to keep their kids differently. They can keep their kids, but when they dismiss, they're gone. Right? So I haven't heard that. Okay, Sheila.
Okay, I have a few questions. I was kind of wondering specifically about Valley View, because they did go to a Friday early dismissal, and they did it with quite a lot of parent consultation. And will that mean that they stop doing the Friday and go to this standard? But I guess I'm having so some of the schools are doing quite a lot, like 2.5 hours every week. This is going to pull it back. What's the early dismissal going to be? It's like an hour or an hour and a half? Is that the plan?
It was 90 minutes.
90 minutes, okay. So 15 times 90 minutes. Mm-hmm. And so just and that's within the mandated instructional time. So we have a range of mandated instructional time.
Yep.
And were we at the top and we're now going down towards the lower, like we're going down?
The definition, the ministry has changed their definition of instructional. What is classified as instructional time?
Yeah.
That's changed. Yeah. That's allowed flexibility to districts to do some of these sorts of things, and that was part of the reason to change it.
Yeah, I mean,
so they've gone to minimums is basically what they've gone to. And when we talk to the ministry about this, and we're not the only district that's looking at this, what it was around to make because as you would expect, the whole assessment piece is expected to change when you look inside the BC Ed plan, and so the focus, which had been on minutes, counting minutes of instruction, has shifted from just a minimum of amount of time. So you can't go below a certain level. We're nowhere near that. We were in the middle of the pack, I'd say, in terms of maximum. I think that's what you're asking. We were sort of in the middle of the pack in terms of the instructional minutes we were offering to students. We were nowhere near the minimum, and we weren't at the maximum is governed by collective agreements, teacher collective agreements, to be truthful. That's where it is. And as we asked for, as we started working on this last year, before the job action, I was speaking directly with the superintendent of achievement about this and weighing the pros and cons about it. And because the learning outcomes have changed and have changed significantly in terms of streamlined, reduced, and looking at a different way of teaching key concepts, that there was no, when I asked straight up, was there any lack of confidence in the ability of a district who would be looking at a model like this to be meeting the learning outcomes, he looked at me and said, well, that's up to you, because you're going to set within those key concepts what it is that you're teaching. That's the switch. So if I see your concern, and I have heard that concern connected to the old model of the traditional calendar.
Yeah.
What I would answer to that is that we believe that the learning outcomes for kids are going to be enhanced by the collaboration that teachers are going to get and the opportunities to change strategies. And we don't see a connection between a loss of time because the mandate from the ministry has changed so significantly about learning outcomes. If we were being benchmarked, Sheila, by all the individual exams that kids used to have to write, and benchmarked by all the 114 learning outcomes for kindergarten that we never ever could meet, right, in the binder of kindergarten, then we would need to count minutes. But I think that this lines with, I don't have the same fear that I would have had 5 years ago because of how our kids were being benchmarked through standardized testing and a series of learning outcomes that were checkboxes.
So this is a bit of a devil's advocate thing for me, because I actually have never thought that physical presence in the classroom meant that any learning was going on, right? And that we are, in essence, admitting that there's been a lot of slack time or busy work in a way, and that our kids are, the average and better than average child is capable of getting their work done, especially when they're being supported by teacher collaboration and best practices, is getting their work done in a shorter period of time. But I do feel as a trustee it's my obligation to ask you for information, and I think I'd probably like something a little more hard numbers and maybe your rationale here in writing, because as a trustee, for me to vote for some significant changes based on it's sort of going to be better and we trust, it's not necessarily meeting. So I kind of get that, and then I'm thinking, and you're also making an argument that instead of taking those average or better kids and saying we're going to compact their learning time, and now we'll improve their achievement by giving them more, we're saying we're going to just be accepting that they've met their requirements and let them go, and that the trade-off will be around that. So I kind of need a rationale, something that will make me go, I can accept that. And then it's an interesting thing about using that time to give the lower than average kids the extra focus and attention, focus learning that they need. That's a good strategy, and hopefully we'll be able to evaluate it and see that that's happening. It's interesting. So as a trustee, I feel I can believe this, but I think that I need to ask for more concrete things that we're middle of the pack and we ought to be okay.
So I think we're not voting on adopting this calendar tonight. We're voting on it next month. So I think what we can do is we can maybe have senior management bring back some of the information, address that for the next month's meeting. And they've got your concern, and they can address some of that, because we're not actually voting on adopting the calendar tonight. We're just taking the draft out for consultation purposes, and getting that feedback on there. So I think that we can take this in the next step. And I have Peter,
Well, on the consultation process itself, I'm sure the superintendent will make sure that every principal is well aware that they've got to make extra effort to get parent feedback, because this is potentially very troubling for some parents.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's one point. On the point of instructional time, though, I used to be a big believer in instructional time, minute by minute. But the highest achieving country in the world for many years has been Finland. They have the shortest school year in Europe by far. They have very, very good teachers.
And Donna, I have you as...
Is it not less time for this than it is now with I think Lake Charles Wednesdays, Isfeld's Fridays? That, to me, I'm looking at that, if it's status quo, it's about 34 hours a school year, whereas with this, it's 22 and a half. So, time-wise,
we were counting it for time. That's why I didn't say that. I honestly didn't answer that question.
So just to get back to, we're not voting on adopting this calendar tonight. This is voting on the draft development consultation. It will come back at next month's meeting, and then you can bring back some more information to address some of the concerns that brought up tonight. And what is the final date for consultation? When does that have to be answered by?
The board must submit the proposed calendar to the administrator by March 31st, 2013.
Okay, and so the consultation going out to the community will be what date you would want the information back by?
It will go out until, sorry, I haven't got a calendar in front of me, speaking which, maybe I could use one of these ones here. It'll go out starting tomorrow, and then probably until a couple of days before the board meeting.
It would be at least a week before the board meeting.
Yeah, so we can collate all the data.
And just clarification, there's going to be a process that you have in place that how would I say this, no one can stack the votes, am I correct? There's going to be a process where people individually, that we can ensure that we're getting a correct perspective from a broad community, not from certain.
That's right.
Okay. So I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? You've already spoken. We'll talk about that.
Yeah, and I have more questions.
What?
But I'm going to procedure. It's been speaking one time limit's been 5 minutes, so we have another 20 minutes to go. And I think this is, like I said, we can carry on to the next month's meeting. So all those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. So next one is the student engagement luncheon. Mr. Coleman, briefing note.
It's just a suggestion that we repeat the successful experiment of last year.
We'd be pleased to do so. Thank you.
Secretary Horsfall, you have the next one. The briefing note on the ecological reserve, archaeological assessment and project plan.
Thank you. On page 38 in your package is a very brief briefing note. What I would actually point you to is in that memo is a URL to our webpage. It's been a year-long process. We've engaged a environmental assessment company to assess the forest area above Vanier, and that is now complete. So the information is now public. So if people are interested, they can find a full copy of the 80-page document on our webpage.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you. Next item, good news, Superintendent Sherwood. Sorry, I copied my name.
That's all right. Apparently there was a superintendent before me.
There was.
I'm not going to read it because I'm conscious of the time. Lots of wonderful things going on. We have student exchanges. We have students going to live in all kinds of different places in the world, and of course that allows us to receive those homestay students back to us, and that always is an enriching experience for our students. The only other thing that I would like to bring forward is at the very bottom. I would have added, but I didn't get it until today. That there's a young woman in our community who's the most amazing songwriter and singer. That's Keisha Cox. Isfeld wanted to let us know that she's been in a competition for CBC called the Searchlight competition. It's part of CBC Radio, and out of 3,000 applicants or musicians that have been competing, she's made the top 20. And so that's that young woman who has this wonderful voice and sings like an angel. She just performed at an Isfeld assembly just recently, and it was just amazing. She has her own CD that's out right now. Her song, Take Me Away, which was released in the CD in October, is the song that she's using to showcase herself for the CBC Radio. And it's one of those things that has become the way of television and radio that Valley citizens can vote for Keisha to make it to the final. And you can vote by going on the CBC website. I'm doing it. It's blatant. I'm telling you that now. She's marking it, and I don't care. And so, I mean, think about what that is out of 3,000 musicians. So Valley citizens, I'm hoping the reporters are picking this up, can vote for Keisha on the CBC website. Just you go onto the website and you look for Searchlight All Points West. And then it'll take you there, and apparently you can vote every day. Your child can vote every day. Your husband can vote every day. You just tell him how to vote. And it would be great for Keisha to move within that top 20. So that's the final piece of the Good News celebration.
You're not biased at all, are you?
I am blatantly biased and a little pushy, gotta tell you. It's pretty exciting for us. Lots of wonderful things going on, and of course the very last one on the page 40, just to let trustees know that Highland will be hosting the regional tournament for Destination Imagination. We've got teams from Highland, Isfeld, Rob Road, and some mixed teams from Vanier. Remember that Destination Imagination is this incredible experience that we have found ourselves involved in across in the Valley, and our students have gone to globals 2 years in a row and have won their categories or placed very well in the gold medal rounds. For reasons that are exciting and I can't quite articulate, it has just fit our district really well. And so I had the pleasure or the surprise of meeting the co-founder guru of Destination Imagination at a conference, and he read my name tag and he hugged me, and I didn't even know who he was, and I'm like, this doesn't usually happen to me. And he was just, you're from the Comox Valley, and he just went nuts about the kids that we've been sending to these competitions. So we're pleased to host it. It's the first time we have ever hosted a regional. It's quite an honor for us. We're a small district to be hosting the big region. And so if you want to see some amazing things and some talented kids in a very challenging, thought-provoking opportunities and activities, come on Saturday, March. It's open to the public. Come and have a look. You will just be blown away, and you'll say, I don't think I could have done that. And you'll see these amazing kids performing all these amazing things. So please join us. It'll be excellent.
Thank you. Linda Marie, Human Resources Report.
Yes, very quickly, page 41 for the retirement and resignation. So I've been asked to read those. So Phyllis Turner, custodian, will retire February 28th after 22 years of service for the district. Bob Patterson, HVAC trades plumber, will retire May 3rd after 6 years of service. Brenda Thompson, library clerk, will retire April 12th after 25 years of service for the district. Dirk Ganato, the principal of Cumberland L, will retire at the end of July 31st after 10 years of service. Janice Clare, EA at Glacier View, will retire June 27th after 25 years of service. And we have a resignation of a Strong Start program worker. So all those retirees will be honored at the board function for retirees in June 2013.
Thank you. Under board committee reports, Mr. Burnham, Finance Committee. Mr. Burnham.
The finance meeting was held February the 12th, and the bulk of the finance committee meeting was to review the amended operating budget. And you see the recommendations there. We need to pass the amended budget. So I'll read the first one if you like.
Go right ahead.
The school district number 71, Comox Valley, 2012-13, amended annual budget bylaw in the amount of $84,045,853 received its first reading.
Do you have any seconder for that for procedure? Yes, seconder. All right, Peter, thank you. Any questions, comments? Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Pass unanimously. Do you wish to read the second one also?
Okay. The school district number 71, Comox Valley, 2012-13, amended annual budget bylaw in the amount of $84,045,853 received its second reading.
Seconder. Peter, thank you. Any comments? All those in favor? Okay, go ahead for the third one. Continue on, Mr. Brennan. You're doing well.
That the board unanimously agreed to suspend the requirements of the School Act and Board's Procedural Bylaw 2007 to have the third reading at a subsequent meeting.
Okay, seconder. Donna, thank you. This one must pass unanimously. Any comments? Questions? All those in favor? You're doing so good.
That's school district number 71, Comox Valley, 2012-13, amended annual budget bylaw in the amount of $84,045,853 received its third and final reading.
Seconder. Thank you, Donna. All those in favor? Passed.
Okay.
And the consultation process, can you speak to that? 2013.
Yeah, it's on page 65. So if you just want to flip over. As you can see here, we will be coming back to the board with a in-camera meeting on the budget updates on where we are. Between April 8th and the 17th, we will have internal stakeholders consultation. Then on April the 18th, from 6:30 to 8 o'clock, we will have a public presentation consultation, and that will happen in the boardroom here. At the same time, April 16th to the 30th, we will have the budget on the website, and you will be able to make comments via email in regards to the budget. April the 23rd, regular board meeting, budget update. And hopefully May the 28th, we will approve the budget for next year.
Thank you. Does any trustees have any comments with respect to the Finance Committee report? Seeing none, you wish to move the report?
Move that the board receive the financial report, or the Finance Committee report.
Okay, gotcha.
Thank you.
Second. Thank you, Donna. All those in favor? Perfect, thank you. And Policy Advisory Committee, my understanding is there's no report because we're waiting till we have our governance session, so it'll be a bit while before we meet. Perfect, thank you. Transportation Ad Hoc Committee, report from Chair Sheila. Do you have anything to report to us?
Well, I think some of you may have seen in a report in the paper that the City of Courtenay has approved $5,000 in each of 2 years towards the active travel school travel planning process. So our contribution and that plus the CBRD's travel or cycling task force. And so we're moving forward to get the remainder of the funds needed. And there's been some really very positive response. A bunch of parent meeting that had a really good turnout and a very active group. I know that was a concern before. So enthusiastic about that. The Transportation Committee meeting will be having its bi-monthly meeting next week.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Great. I'm glad to see that they're actually supporting the school district, supporting some money there. That was really good.
Great. Yeah, good.
So we have board business and to superintendent, the inquiry update. Do you have anything to report tonight, Madam?
I actually do. I do know that the commissioner, the FOIPOC commissioner, actually is working on the file right now because we've had some communication from her that leads us to believe that she's actually got the file in hand and has actually begun her deliberations on the file itself. And so that would lead me to hope that the fact that she's connected with ourselves and our lawyers, that she's working on it, and that we would perhaps even by the next board meeting have her ruling on what we can release and what we can't.
Thank you.
I wasn't able to report that before.
So I'm looking at the clock, and if my glasses can actually see, I think we've got about 10 minutes. 12 minutes, okay. So we've got a few more items to go through, so hopefully we'll get through them. It's your turn.
Thank you. Next item's on page 66 and 67 in your package. This is a bylaw, capital project bylaw that we require. So 4 more motions from you, please. This is for $72,985, which is the total cost of doing the seismic project identification report for GP Vanier. This is the study that was incorporated into our capital plan. So we require the bylaw. Once we get the bylaw, we'll be reimbursed for the costs of the study.
Okay. So you see before you the recommendations. Do I have a mover and a seconder?
I'll move it.
Okay, if you have to read it, though.
That's School District number 71, Comox Valley, capital project bylaw number 115044 in the amount of $72,985 receive its first reading.
And do I have a seconder? Thank you, Donna. All those in favor? Okay, I need a reader for the second one, please.
I move that School District number 71, Comox Valley Capital Project Bylaw number 115044 in the amount of $72,985 receive its second reading.
Seconder? Thank you, Peter. All those in favor? Okay, can I get a reader for the third one, please?
I move that the Board unanimously agree to suspend the requirements of the School Act and Board's Procedural Bylaw 2007 to have the third reading at a subsequent meeting.
Okay, do I have a seconder? Thank you, Rick. This must pass unanimously. All those in favor? So thank you. And can I get a reader for the fourth one, please?
Okay. Move that the School District number 71, Comox Valley Capital Project Bylaw number 115044 receive a third and final reading.
And do I have a seconder? Thank you, Mr. Grinham. Any comments? Okay.
I'm in favor.
Okay, all those in favor? Perfect, thank you. And I'm actually going to pass this over to you because I am going to say something about my School Trustees Association and the budget. I'll make it brief. I'm looking at the clock here. I happened to attend Provincial Council meeting, which was last weekend in Vancouver, on Friday night and Saturday. On Friday night, we had the Deputy Minister, Mr. James Gorman, did a presentation to the trustees. And our President, Mr. Michael McEvoy, made comments on the Saturday to thing around the budget. And I'll just make 3 points. We have determined this is not an education budget. There is no new money for school districts. There's no new money in there to cover any costs related to pensions, MSPs, hydro increases, or anything. The government is not supporting school districts in that respect, so we need to find the money from elsewhere. We are concerned over the fact that the ministry and the minister and the government has talked about families first, when children are the most integral part of our family and education is not being funded publicly. So it was a great concern to the association when you're told that your holdback monies that you were expecting for may go to AFGs for next year. We may not be getting this year. As promised, they're going somewhere else. They talked about the need for school district to actively go out there and sell properties because they're looking for money. So it was very disappointing to hear that from the Deputy Minister, and the association is very concerned over the financial, the budget, and no new money for school districts, and the impact that will have in the classroom, because we have to pay for those fees out of the monies that our school district currently has. And that little wedge of the pie that we have is getting smaller and smaller all the time, and our costs are increasing. So that's my rant for the evening. I was not impressed. Can I have my gravel back?
I'll just make one comment.
Okay.
As a finance committee, it's going to be a roller coaster, so hang on.
And in the light of time, we have item number 4, the letter regarding from Saanich, and we brought that up there. And Sheila, you wanted it brought up for conversation.
Well, I just wondered whether senior management have looked at the proposal and what they're thinking about it. Certainly, I like the concept of it being locally developed and by educators who know and understand the BC system. And I think the cost factors are very positive. Obviously, there's a comment there about they were not be eligible to bid on the upcoming request for proposals from the BC government, which is an entirely ideological decision because the government has established a 3P, a private-public partnership thing, which means that taxpayers' money will go to support businesses in doing it. And here we are with a public education, public sector solution which will be caught out and which will result in hugely escalated causes. We know the BCBC was a bit of a disaster partly for that reason, and so I just wondered if you have comments for us and if the other trustees have views on this. I would be interested to know whether this is something we should make a statement of support towards or encourage the government to open the bidding process to this group.
Through you, Madam Chair, we certainly have been actively following and discussing this with Saanich. We're one of the districts from the very beginning that attended all the workshops and all the meetings. We have just recently sent a team of folks down to the Open Student, and they spent a whole day there looking at what the potential of the product is. And that included QP and actually I think there was a teacher there, and I think there was a teacher, yeah, there was, and administrators who use the system. It's not, as I said, there's no sense sending me down there. I used to use ESIS, and I haven't used it for a while. And I did like it then, and I don't think my opinion has changed. And certainly they come back with, they met just recently and made recommendations to me as the superintendent that this is something we should actively pursue. Certainly I've had 3 conversations with the superintendent just recently as of yesterday, and I know the Secretary Treasurers have had a look at it, and Russell had come back and said to me, we should really have a look at it, and we already were. So it is something that as senior staff we were looking at moving towards supporting, and in fact not just supporting in terms of the initial partnership, but they've asked for a couple of districts to pilot a little bit so that they can not just be Saanich that's trying it out, and I put our name forward. Our team said that they could certainly, with the expertise we've got here, run a couple of their sort of mock trials for them so that a couple of districts can give them some feedback like within the next month or two, which will help people say, well, it's not just in Saanich that it's usable. So we're pursuing it and looking at it right now fairly favorably. We really are looking at, well, now we're just asking for what does cost look like over time. We had a few questions that we asked. We sat down there and they're getting their folks to talk back to our programmers. But Yeah, one of the things that was the hesitation for all school districts on sort of getting on board up until about 8 months ago was the ministry was not being clear in their communication about whether or not districts who chose to go part of Open Student would have reasonably easy access to the flow of, it's called tracing, of student information to the ministry. There was some lack of clarity about whether or not, if you weren't using the provincial government system, whether or not they would, whether or not the ability to send our data to that system would be reasonably easy. And in fact, there was certainly an implication that they might charge us for that, where they wouldn't be charging the districts, the other districts. They've clarified that now, and clearly there will be a portal for Open Student data to go to the ministry at no cost, because we did remind them that that would be really probably challenged constitutionally, kind of. And so what's happened is that once that was cleared, many other districts, including ourselves, said, okay, so tell us more, because that was the one sticking point that we had. So we're looking at it, and we certainly could report to you at the next board meeting what our final thoughts are about that.
Anybody else have any questions? Yes, Mr. Graham.
Yeah, just the interesting thing is that BC ESIS was forced upon us to begin with by the ministry at a horrendous cost. And now all of a sudden, December 2015, it's no more. I mean, it just boggles the mind, the amount of educational dollars we spent.
Thank you. So we'll look forward to receiving some more information at the next meeting. So, did you have a question?
Just a comment. Simon Fraser went all through this a few years back. Turned down a reasonably effective student information system used in many, many universities in favor of developing their own. 5 years later, after $5, $6, $7 million spent, they bought in a commercial system.
Okay. So with 1 minute to spare, do you have any questions from anybody? Have any questions? No? Yes?
If you were to be looking at calendars, how would that affect the student curriculum in the school, such as also for
So in the districts that have moved toward that, they've either they've developed an alternate sports calendar that runs through those breaks, but that's difficult for people to have holidays in. But very often folks aren't going away; the kids are still going at home. And then, of course, one of the things that's been evolving over time is that it's now the regions that make the decisions about their sports calendars. When BC School Sports sets it for seasons of play, but the actual scheduling of those leagues and stuff are done regionally. So that could probably be managed. We didn't look any further into it because this is subject for information, but I know the districts that do, and because they regionally set their calendars. And then there is that whole life of BC School Sports that happens independently of whatever we're doing anyway, right? They don't seem to change, even when we ask them to.
And I was really glad you're looking at this Spanish thing, because when I saw it on the news, I think it was really awesome.
So, any more questions? So, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Thank you, Madam